and a strain, most of the time, you usually will feel like a fracture, but it is not. Okay, but if it happens on a long bone, and how will you be able to tell for certain that it is a fracture? Whenever you try and move that part, there is a lot of pain. We say a fracture is very painful. Okay, so anytime you try and move it, there's going to be a lot of pain. At some point, there's going to be swelling. And a bruise. A bruise is what we call a discoloration. Okay, because you find most of the time a fracture is going to be caused by external force. Yeah, so ukigongwa, you can break a bone. So utajuaje, again, as I've said, there's going to be pain and a bruise. Yes.
So how differently do we handle people who have a strain and people who have fractures?
Very good. Now, for a strain or a sprain, we say just apply a cold pack. Okay, so if it is an ankle, for example, we use what we call the RICE. Okay, R-I-C-E. So R.
Simchele.
Simchele.
Okay.
Simchele. So R stands for rest. So rest the affected part. So if they were probably using their leg, you can tell them to rest, avoid putting pressure on the leg. And then I stands for ice. So this is why you put a cold compress. You can either use a cold compress, which is found in your first aid kit. If you don't have that, you can use deep freeze, not deep heat.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the difference?
What is the difference? Now, deep heat, as the name says, it applies heat. Okay, so the heat, usually we use that in a muscle pull. You see, when you have a muscle pull, it is because your muscle has contracted. So we apply the heat to help it expand, reduce the contraction. Okay, but with deep freeze, it is the cold. So which is what we are after. So a strain, we use deep freeze. Okay, and then C stands for comfort. Okay, as well as now putting the cold compress. Okay, and then E is elevate. Yeah, so if you're putting them down on the floor, make sure you elevate the leg.
Show us. We're talking about putting a leg on the floor. Lakini tuone tukiwa nyumbani.
Tukiona tukiwa
So that I
nyumbani.
don't block her.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I should stand here. Okay.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so this is my casualty. She has had a strain or a sprain on the ankle.
Yes.
Okay, so we are saying the first thing we're going to do is to ask her to rest, isn't it? Which she's already resting.
Okay.
And then we are going to apply ice. Okay, so when we apply ice or something cold, we are going to tie, which is now what we are calling compression. Okay, so tying it, I can as well take my bandage, a triangular bandage. Okay, so where I have put the ice, I will come and I will apply a compress. Okay, it can be as simple as that, isn't it? And then we're saying we want to elevate. So elevate means just raise her leg, isn't it? If you have a stool like this one,
Yes.
okay, we can take the stool and then we elevate. Okay, so when we elevate, we are reducing the pressure that is being applied on the ankle. So that is what we mean by rise.
For how long?
For how long? Probably for around an hour. Okay, and then the pain now will have reduced.
Yeah.
But we're saying if you see that the pain is not reducing, then probably we might start thinking about this could be a fracture. Because with a sprain, once we do this, the pain should definitely go away. Yes.
Are there dangers of treating a fracture as a sprain and then, you know, realizing later that you're actually tending to a fracture? Are there dangers that comes with that?
Definitely there are dangers, because you find we say with a fracture, our main aim is immobilization. Immobilization means we want to keep this part from moving, because every time it is moving, definitely the fracture is getting worse. So if we decide to treat a fracture as a sprain, we are saying that if my casualty has been injured today, by tomorrow she'll be walking. So what happens every time she tries to walk? We are making the fracture worse. Okay, and that is why I have said that with a sprain or a strain, the pain will go away after a short time. But with a fracture, the pain is definitely going to be for long.
You're saying you need to leave that, you know, the ice compressed there for like an hour, but ice melts. So do we add more ice every time it melts?
Yes, we need to add more ice every time it melts, okay? But again, I will always recommend for us to have what we call a cold compress. So the cold compress, it is a gel, okay? So that one does not usually melt and it retains the cold. So if you can get a first aid kit that has a cold compress, and then we can put it here and it will melt. But for ice, yes, we need to keep on changing it to retain the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is what we're after.
So do we only experience sprains on the ankle? Kwa knee pia, we can actually experience a sprain there. And how would you tend to that as compared to how you tend to the one on the ankle?
Now, at the knee, at the ankle, it is the same. As long as we're saying that there is overstretching or tearing of the ligaments. So you have said that ligaments are at every joint. So at the ankle, we have ligaments. At the knee, we have ligaments. At the wrist, at the elbow, we also have ligaments. Okay? So any